I had a thought about the Black Hammers because that thing is just so weird to me.
Okay, shoot.
So, uh, a lot of this stuff about the Black Hammers shoots back to me about this new word I'd learned going deeper into the criticisms of left wing activism, and that's the fact that we're more mired in a culture of sectarianism. And to me, this whole Black Hammers thing literally just seems like a break off of like the black activist movement because a lot of the talking points established by this Ghazi person, which is the assumptive leader of this faction, looking like a black ass Kefka motherfucker, by the way. Like, literally looks like Kefka from Final Fantasy III. Not even gonna lie. Face paint, clown behavior, eccentricism, not even really taking themselves seriously up until the point that they start attacking the anti-fascist movement, or Antifa, which apparently is being addressed as another faction. So maybe they're specifically attacking the anti-fascist chapter in Colorado. I don't know. But that's you find out through this video that's where the Black Hammers are positioned. And what I'm kind of learning is it's not just right wingers. There are sects of the sectarian left that actually do believe Black Lives Matter, for example, are bought by Democrats. And this is actually a point or a position that this Ghazi person, I don't know the person's actual name, they just go by Ghazi. They're some kind of weird clown that has these other mostly black people in black blocks standing in a line behind them. And something that actually frightens me about this group is Ghazi has complete loyalty and uniformity from these people. I don't know how long these lines were rehearsed, but this clown, looking so silly and bizarre, really wanted to intimidate the anti-fascist sect of Colorado by saying,
How that
I have this fucking army behind me. You attacked one of ours and now we're coming for you.
how'd that work out for him?
Why does it sound like some sort of ICP fan base,
Well,
like a
there's a
fan
lot
club
of
or something?
nuance here because I'm also looking at the situation and thinking to other left wing people, what did doxing get you? You doxed a person. Apparently, you had no clue they were a mother and had kids, and that pissed off this clown, and now this clown is out for blood. And they have sledgehammers, by the way, so I don't think they're coming to play nice. And that's got me concerned because we don't talk about this too often because it would be controversial to talk about, like, on national TV and stuff like that. But we have this sectarian sect in the United States of black activist groups that are largely anti-white to the point that they are reminiscent of Malcolm X. To the point that they'll even start talking about the notion on how the Jewish race was white colonized, right? So they established like this differentiation between black Hebrew Israelites and white Jewish people. And they point out, like, it's essentially this Malcolm X sort of perspective where the Jewish people are just as accountable as Anglo-Saxons because of their white skin. And we're seeing this a lot more often on the extremist sect of the black community. Seem to all point to the root of one thing, and it's the fact that the unified left-wing causes are predominantly white, and it is predominantly white people trying to tell the black community what to do. This is essentially the angle they're going at. This Ghazi person even emphasizes this by pointing out the anti-fascists are just a bunch of white people in black bloc that come to their neighborhoods and destroy their homes. This is important to recognize because often I think we don't look inward too much when we start to realize the rhetoric has infected far more than the right wing and comes from far more than just the white nationalist sect. This rhetoric that everyone's bought, the media's bought, George Soros has some involvement with shit. Shocking, I know, does not just come from white nationalists. And I've only recently started to realize this, having realized just how split up the left in the United States actually is. These small sects and factions that either don't last really long, or these sects and factions that become a real threat to the point that they're on a terror watch list. I know I've engaged Scarlett about Malcolm X before in particular, and obviously, Scarlett doesn't have very glowing opinions about Malcolm X because he was an anti-Semite. There's no glossing over that.
To
And
clear things up about Malcolm X and my thoughts of him, it's Malcolm X himself is not the person I have exactly problems with. No, let's me clear this up. But it was the Muslim Brotherhood which came after him that I have many particular issues with, because it's one of their charter thoughts, and what they push is the idea that Israelite and Jewish persons had used their African Americans for their own agenda, and that is feeding into right-wing conspiracies that are just heinous.
yeah. And something I've noticed is that uh, organizations that tout themselves more from a left-leaning sort of socialized perspective, right? They like brand themselves as a commune, or some kind of organization towards left-wing activism, start to consume and regurgitate a lot of right-wing talking points from their position. These Black Hammers do a similar thing in their message of black supremacy. Ghazi, in particular, the primary reason this leader of the Black Hammers is being called out for anti-Semitism is when Anne Frank was brought up in the discussion. He was just like, "Fuck Anne Frank. I don't care about Anne Frank." He goes on to explain how Anne Frank is a name that's remembered. Anne Frank is a person who died in the Holocaust that is remembered, has a museum talking about her and the events she suffered through that ultimately took her life. Something I've started to notice is existential dread seems to become a tool of bigotry, because Ghazi starts to appeal to an inner emotion I do believe exists in Black America at large. Talking about how there are a lot of young children and people who died on slave ships over in the United States whose names will never be remembered. People who died in incidents whose names weren't jotted down or remembered in the history books. So then, it's worded very carefully, the propaganda essentially becomes, why should I care about this white Jewish girl when the Jewish people were originally my race and were colonized by white people? Wow. And it blew my mind that these talking points can go about that far, to the point that you can be anti-Semitic and anti-white at the same time. And that these things coalesce into one another, creating this beast of propaganda that taps into people's rage or inner turmoil to convince them to do things they wouldn't otherwise do. I don't know. What do you think about that, Scarlett?
I feel strongly that issues like we're seeing right now are being created. Actually, I don't want to say that. Let me pull back. They're not created out of thin air. No, not at all. But they're being used as opportunities by people who we would recognize as antagonists to left-wing causes, as a wedge issue to splinter and split peoples who should be rallying together and finding within each other brotherhood and allies. This is something that groups on the right, fascist groups on the right, always do when they are cornered. They especially by multiple enemies. They find an issue that's a wedge issue, and they hammer that wedge and try to create division and chaos. And right now, with what's happening in Israel, this is a easy wedge issue for such persons to do so in Israel. And also, I'm not going to pull punches. There are going to be such persons here in the United States who are going to do that right now as we speak, live. We're going to use this as their opportunity to create a wedge issue between people on the left who want to support oppressed Muslims, but also have their history in supporting the right for Israel to exist. Because the thing is, they want to make it so as if it sounds like if you can't believe in both. And that's bullshit. That's utter bullshit. You can have both.